And here he comes again off the turnover, and he slams it home! Outstanding girls basketball matchup between the team on top to the forehead.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Unscripted with SkoodSports. I'm your host, John Skoudris. Exciting episode for you today as we continue our NFL predictions with the AFC North, one of the toughest divisions every year in football. As Ray Lewis would say, who played, of course, in that division his entire career, this is one of the hottest hitting, most God-fearing, Jesus-loving divisions in all of sports. Ray Lewis, of course, inducted into the Hall of Fame this weekend, along with one of my all-time favorites, Weapon X, the Wolverine, Brian Dawkins. B-Doc, of course, one of the great Philadelphia Eagles of all time, spent most of his career here before he finished it off in Denver at the end. And we're obviously going to pay tribute to B-Doc first here on Unscripted with SkoodSports. It's my top 5 Brian Dawkins moments of all time. It was real tough to narrow down the top 5 B-Doc moments. Obviously, Brian had a momentous career and a ton of achievements as a Philadelphia Eagle, multiple-time All-Pro, many Pro Bowls, and of course a Super Bowl appearance back in 2004. But we begin with the top 5 with his performance in 2008 against the Dallas Cowboys. As we all remember, 2008 was a year of turmoil. Much of the season for the Philadelphia Eagles. The Birds started out very poor, and after a mid-season swoon, they ended up benching Donovan McNabb against the Baltimore Ravens in favor of Kevin Kolb, the once and future king who never sat on his throne. But as you take a look at this game, Brian Dawkins against the Dallas Cowboys, Week 17, a game that was winner get in for the final wildcard spot in the NFC playoffs, and B-Doc certainly came to play, forcing 2 fumbles in this matchup against Tony Romo and the Cowboys, both of which were returned for touchdowns in the second half of the game that blew this one wide open. And of course, you see there the hit on Marion Barber that forced the fumble that was returned all the way by Joselio Hansen. We also had that hit on Tony Romo that forced a fumble that Chris Clemens brought all the way for a touchdown as well. B-Doc in this game, multiple forced fumbles, great leadership in getting his team prepared for what was one of the bigger games in the regular season of Andy Reid's tenure here, as the Eagles would go on to the NFC Championship that year before, shocker, under Andy Reid losing to the Arizona Cardinals. Number 4 on my list of the top Brian Dawkins moments of all time is this 2002 matchup against the Houston Texans. In this game, Brian Dawkins became the first player in NFL history to record a sack, an interception, force a fumble, and get a touchdown reception in a single game. This reception on a fake punt shovel pass from Brian Mitchell, a special teams extraordinaire, helped propel the Eagles to a blowout victory over the expansion Texans to improve to 3-1 at the time. The Eagles would go on to finish 12-4, capturing the NFC East for the 3rd consecutive season, and ultimately losing in the NFC Championship game. Number 3 on my list is actually an under-the-radar Brian Dawkins moment. Not a lot of people may remember it, and it's a good reason why the quality of this video is what it is. The quality of video on this is poor, and I apologize for that, but that's largely due to the fact that this is such an under-the-radar Brian Dawkins moment from 2003, when at the Washington Redskins on Sunday night, B-Doc delivered the suplex tackle. He was flagged 15 yards for a personal foul, but honestly, this was the first time that I had ever seen a player perform this type of tackle on an opposing wide receiver as he drives the Redskins receiver into the ground, showing his strength, intimidating the opponent, and proving that nobody passes on the Eagles secondary, especially back then when you had a secondary that comprised of Troy Vincent, Bobby Taylor, Michael Lewis, B-Doc, as well as young players Lito Shepherd and Sheldon Brown. This is number 3 because of the impact it had on that season. The Eagles, going into that game, had just won a couple of games in a row. They would ultimately win more than 8 games in a row and win the division, capture the number 1 seed in the NFC before, as usual, losing in the NFC Championship game, this time to the Carolina Panthers. Number 2 on my list of Brian Dawkins' top moments is his performance in the 2004 NFC Championship game, the game that finally got the Eagles over their NFC title game hurdle. Prior to this matchup against the Atlanta Falcons, Philadelphia had lost 3 consecutive NFC title games under Andy Reid. to the Rams, Bucks, and Panthers respectively. In this matchup against their NFC South opponent, Brian Dawkins brought the heat. This hit on Algie Crumpler set the tone for the rest of the game. The Falcons would go on to score a touchdown on this drive, as Crumpler, as you see there, did hold on to the reception. A great play by one of the great tight ends back in the early aughts. But B-Dawk's ferocious hit ended up setting a tone that would not be forgotten the rest of the way. Later on in the game, this interception of Mike Vick on a poorly thrown ball by the southpaw quarterback was returned deep into Falcons territory. The Eagles would turn it into a field goal and ultimately win the game by the final score of 27-10. With the win, the Eagles advanced to just their second Super Bowl in franchise history before losing ultimately to Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. Number one on my list of Brian Dawkins moments is none other than his most recent Hall of Fame speech. On Saturday night, B-Dawk was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, very deservingly so, and his speech was deserving of it as well. B-Dawk, a great player in his time and a great man over the course of his life, but he did come clean with his battle with depression, not only during his playing career, but before and after as well. And B-Dawk, not only inspirational on the field and on the sideline, but inspirational in life as well, as he talks about how if you are battling depression, there is always something beyond the horizon.
As you've been listening all, and you probably read all this week, I suffered from depression. I went through it mightily my rookie year. I suffered through suicidal thoughts. And I wasn't just suffering through suicidal thoughts. I was actually planning the way that I would kill myself so my wife would get the money. Not yet, not yet. But what that pain did for me, it increased my faith exponentially. I have grown leaps and bounds because of the things that I've gone through, and that's one of those things that I went through. And when I say went through, that means I came on the other side of it. So for those who are going through right now, there's hope. You do have hope. There is something on the other side of this. Don't get caught up where you are. Don't stay where you are. Keep moving. Keep pushing through.
What a speech, what a moment, and what a man. Brian Dawkins, a Pro Football Hall of Famer, the most recent Eagle inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm sure there'll be more and many more to come in the future for the Midnight Green and Black. Next up on Unscripted, as promised, we're going to be taking a look at the AFC North, one of the most competitive divisions over the past couple of decades. The North, of course, comprises of the Ohio teams as well as the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens, four teams with a lot of hope coming into the 2018 season, as all four of these teams believe they can compete for a playoff spot. Yes, even the Cleveland Browns, who have won one game the last 2 years. We begin with the defending AFC North champions, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, last year, the Pittsburgh Steelers had another banner year on Western Pennsylvania, as Heinz Field was the host of another postseason game in the divisional playoffs after Pittsburgh clinched the 2 seed and winning the AFC North in 2017. They came a controversial Jesse James touchdown that was taken away against the New England Patriots, away from potentially hosting all of the AFC playoffs as the number 1 seed in the conference's postseason, but unfortunately that call did not go their way, and Pittsburgh ended up having to play one of their arch nemesis over the last 20 years, the Jacksonville Jaguars, in the divisional round of the playoffs. Leonard Fournette and the Jaguars ran all over the Pittsburgh Steelers in a high-scoring affair as Jacksonville ended up pulling the upset and moving on to the AFC title game in a game they'd ultimately lose to the New England Patriots. Heading into 2018, hopes are high still for Pittsburgh as they return the offensive trifecta of Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, and Antonio Brown. Even though Bell's contract situation is tenuous, he has promised potentially to hold out. I doubt that'll happen because if you hold out, you don't get paid, you get fined, and you don't even get a chance to go to free agency next year because you lose a year on your contract if you don't play. So Bell, I think, will play this year. I think he'll play very well, but I do think that Pittsburgh is going to have its hands full in this division. I think that it's a quality division where Pittsburgh is going to have its ups and downs, but I do still see the Pittsburgh Steelers triumphant in the AFC North. Let's take a look at their schedule and game-by-game predictions for the Pittsburgh Steelers as we look at the 2018 AFC North. As you take a look at their schedule, the Steelers kicking it off with one of the great rivalries in the history of football. The Browns and the Steelers, Week 1 in Cleveland. I think the Browns are going to be much improved, as you'll see shortly, but in Week 1, I think they're going to have their hands full against the Pittsburgh team that, of course, still has a very good offense with the players I mentioned, not to mention young receiver Juju Smith-Schuster. James Washington out of Oklahoma State, who they drafted, is expected to contribute as a rookie as well. I see Pittsburgh starting out very strong, winning their first 4 games of the 2018 season, beating the Browns on the road, Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes, and the Chiefs at home. An easy game on Monday night at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then a victory against their arch nemesis, the Baltimore Ravens, on Sunday Night Football in Week 4 from Heinz Field. From there, the next couple of weeks before their bye, I see a bit of a hiccup for Pittsburgh. The Falcons' offense is poised to have a renaissance campaign as they will come back here in 2018 after another postseason appearance last year. I see them going into Pittsburgh and pulling off the upset largely due to their offensive capabilities. And then I see the Cincinnati Bengals, who I think are going to be a decent team this year. Nothing eye-opening, but a team that's going to at least compete in the AFC North, pulling off the home victory on a Sunday afternoon against the Steelers as Pittsburgh's 4-2 heading into their bye week. They come out of the bye week with a couple of divisional matchups. I think they'll complete the sweep of the Cleveland Browns at home before splitting with the Baltimore Ravens by losing in Maryland in Week 9. Steelers then will go on a mini run here against some teams that I could go either way, really. I think that the next couple of weeks are critical for Pittsburgh. At home against the Panthers on Thursday night. That is a game that Pittsburgh desperately wants to win. But when you look at Pittsburgh, really when you look at Thursday night games in general, the home teams always do better than the road teams. It's about preparation. It's about the fact they really don't have any time to prepare, and being in front of that hometown crowd and sleeping in your own beds can really help out. I see the Steelers beating Cam Newton and the Panthers before getting their revenge on the Jacksonville Jaguars after they lost to Central Florida's football club last year. I see them winning that one on the road before taking care of business against the Denver Broncos on the road as well. A team I really like this year is the Los Angeles Chargers. I think they're going to win the AFC West. Oops, spoiler alert, coming up there later on this month when we predict that division. They will beat the Steelers on the road before Pittsburgh beats down on John Gruden's Raiders from Northern California. Steelers and the Patriots, we already went over the AFC East. As I mentioned, the Patriots always seem to have the Steelers' number. I think they'll take care of this one from Heinz Field. And then a tough matchup in Week 16 against the Saints from the Superdome. I see New Orleans in a game that's scheduled to be on Sunday night right now, but could be flexed out, but I doubt it would be at this time of year. I see New Orleans winning that one. And then the Steelers finish out their regular season with a home victory against the Cincinnati Bengals. I have the Steelers at 10-6. And as you see, that is good enough to win the AFC North. Next up on my AFC North preview is the team that I picked to finish in second place in the AFC North in 2018. Wait for it. Wait for it. Yes, the Cleveland Browns. Who would have thought, after they've won just one game, went 1-31 over the last 2 years, combined under Hugh Jackson, the Cleveland Browns, in my eyes, are the second best team in the AFC North. This is due in large part to an excellent offseason in which Cleveland went out and acquired such performers as quarterback Tyrod Taylor, running back Carlos Hyde, wide receivers Jarvis Landry and Jeff Janis, as well as defensive players Chris Smith, Michael Jenkins, E.J. Gaines, T.J. Carey, and Demarius Randall. They also, of course, drafted star secondary player Denzel Ward out of Ohio State 4th overall, and young quarterback Baker Mayfield. I'm not sure how much time Baker Mayfield will see in the first half of the season, as Tyrod Taylor is a very capable quarterback who, of course, led the Buffalo Bills to their first playoff appearance since 1999 in 2017. But it was a good pickup for the future, as the Browns will hope to mold him behind Taylor as their quarterback of a new era. Let's take a look at the schedule for Cleveland and why I have them finishing where I have them here in 2018. As you see on your screen, and as I did just mention, the Steelers and the Browns open up from Cleveland. I see the Browns getting off to a bit of a slow start with a loss there. I mean, that's a tough first two games, as you see. Then they're at the Saints against Drew Brees and the Saints in New Orleans, as I see them losing that one as well. Then they come back home, and they got a couple of manageable games here. At home on Thursday night against the Jets, who, as you saw in my AFC East predictions, I don't have winning a whole lot of games. I see the Browns winning that one. And then I see the Browns going on their first winning streak in years, since perhaps Brian Hoyer was their quarterback years back, as they will beat the Jets, and then they'll go on the road on the West Coast and take care of John Gruden's Raiders before getting a huge divisional win against the Baltimore Ravens at home in Week 5. That'll put the Browns above 500 for the first time in 3 years. That won't last a whole lot of time, as they will lose at home to the Los Angeles Chargers in Week 6 before bouncing back above 500 with a road win against Jameis Crablegs Winston and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They'll go teeter-totter over the next 4 weeks, as they will lose to the Steelers on the road and then the Chiefs at home before pulling off their biggest upset of the season, as the Falcons, who will be riding high going into this game, will fall and succumb to a dreaded trap game against the Cleveland Browns from Eastern Ohio. Browns will win that one going into their bye week before coming out of the bye week, and with a lot of playoff hopes abound for the Cleveland faithful, starting to struggle coming out of that Week 11 bye. I see them losing to the Bengals and Texans on the road. The Bengals, as I mentioned, we'll have them in a moment, a very competitive team. The Texans, I like Deshaun Watson coming back. I really like the Texans this year. And then a tough couple of games to finish out the season. The Browns will lose to the Panthers at home before beating the Broncos on the road. And then they will beat the Bengals and the Ravens with 2 critical divisional games, not to get into the playoffs, because by that time they'll be 6-8. Playoff chances will be in doubt anyway, but to set them up for 2019 and to give Hugh Jackson's coaching staff confidence in this organization. Now, if Baker Mayfield is starting by then, it's possible some of these picks could fluctuate, but I'm banking on the fact that they'll probably stick with Tyrod Taylor for the entire season, especially if they get off to the kind of start that they got off to. I think that the Browns will beat the Broncos on the road, the Bengals at home, and the Ravens on the road to finish the campaign, a very impressive 8-8. Now, a lot of those wins, of course, are due to a last-place schedule, and we see that every year. Teams that finished in last place moving up. Philadelphia Eagles did it a couple of years back under Chip Kelly. I think the Cleveland Browns will do it here by finishing in second place in the AFC North, which is almost as good as a playoff berth at this point, considering how porous the Browns have been in the last couple of years. Bringing up third place in the AFC North, a team that is always competitive in this division and a lot of people think might make the playoffs this year, the Baltimore Ravens. It is no doubt a make-or-break year for John Harbaugh, and I fear that one of my favorite non-Eagles coaches, of course he was an Eagles special teams and defensive backs coach before he became Ravens coach in 2008, John Harbaugh might be fired with the type of year that I expect them to have, which is a 500 season at 8-8. We take a look at their schedule. The Ravens campaign begins with a home matchup against the Buffalo Bills. I think they'll take care of business against A.J. McCarron and Sean McDermott's club at home. Then they have an immediate Thursday night divisional game. That's really tough early on in the campaign. You have to play 2 games in 10 days just as you're getting the regular season underway, and it's against a divisional opponent on the road. I see the Bengals winning that one, as I mentioned, home teams on Thursday night really do much better than the visitors. The Ravens will bounce back with a home victory against the Broncos team that I just don't see it in this year, before going with back-to-back divisional losses to start out 0-3 in the division. All 3 of those losses on the road, as they will lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. A third straight road game won't be kind either, as the Ravens will begin their campaign 2-4 after 6 weeks with a road loss to Marcus Mariota and the Tennessee Titans. 4 critical games coming up after that I see the Ravens winning all 4 of to get right back in the playoff hunt. a upset victory at home against the New Orleans Saints, followed by road win against the Carolina Panthers and a home win against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That'll bring them into their bye week, one game above 500 at 5-4. They'll come out of the bye with a win at home against the Bengals to split with Cincinnati on the campaign before losses immediately thereafter. At home against the Oakland Raiders and on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. With their season on the line, the Ravens will go into Arrowhead and take care of business against the Pat Mahomes-led Chiefs before they take care of business against the Buccaneers team that I think will be competing for the #1 pick in the NFL Draft next year. With the playoffs firmly in their grasp for the second consecutive season, John Harbaugh will likely lose his job because the Ravens are going to lose, not only on the road to the Chargers, which I think is a forgivable offense, but with a wild card berth in their sights, a home loss to the Cleveland Browns, who will come in knowing that they play spoiler, much like the Cincinnati Bengals did a year ago in Baltimore, as the Browns will win a thriller and send the Ravens to third place at 8-8. With the 8-8 finish, I do foresee the Browns making a change, or I should say the Ravens making a change at head coach. John Harbaugh is a great coach. He won the Super Bowl back in 2012, got the Ravens to the playoffs perennially from 2008 to 2014. But over the last couple of years, he has failed to get over the 500/9-7 hump, and I think that'll be his undoing in 2018. And finally, in last place in the AFC North, though deserving perhaps of second or third in almost any other division in football, Marvin Lewis's Cincinnati Bengals. What an enigma Marvin Lewis is, as this is a guy who has been coach of the Bengals ever since 2003. That's right, 16 years as head coach of a team that has never won a postseason game under his tutelage. The Bengals, of course, conquered this division multiple years in a row in the first few years of Andy Dalton's career. They also won the division back a couple of times with Carson Palmer at the helm in 2005 and 2009, but have never been able to win a postseason game. And that won't end in 2018, as the Bengals will fail to make the postseason despite a respectable record. As we take a look at their schedule, I think the Bengals will get off to a pretty good start. An easy game in week 1. Who knows if Andrew Luck is going to be ready to play NFL football for the first time in 2 years. I think Frank Reich is going to be a good coach for the Colts, but not in 2018, as I see the Bengals winning that one on the road before taking care of business on a Thursday night home matchup, as I just mentioned, against the Ravens. A couple of tough road games do follow against the NFC South opponents, Carolina and Atlanta. I see them falling to 2-2 after those losses. And then going into their bye week strong with wins in 3 out of 4 at home. They'll beat the Dolphins, Steelers, and Buccaneers at home while losing to the Chiefs on the road in week 7. You look at that first half of the schedule, 1 through 8 weeks. That's an easy schedule. I mean, you have the Panthers, the Falcons, the Chiefs, the Steelers, playoff teams from a year ago, but you also have a lot of teams that are in flux right now. The Dolphins, the Buccaneers, the Colts, the Ravens. Teams the Bengals should, and really, hopefully for their sake, will take advantage of in order to get their record above 500 heading into their bye week. I have them at 5-3 going into the bye, which is really good for Marvin Lewis, but the rest of the way the schedule gets a lot more difficult. A home matchup against the New Orleans Saints that I see them losing, followed by a road matchup against the Ravens that I also see them falling in to drop to 500 at 5-5. A couple of easy games after that as they'll take care of business against the Browns and Broncos at home before losing their final 4 games of the season after starting 7-5 on the road at Los Angeles, at home against the Raiders, and on the road against the Browns and Steelers. And I think that hopefully will cost Marvin Lewis his job, as this is a guy who's never won a playoff game. And if you start 7-5, you start 5-3, and can't make the playoffs and finish below 500 and in last place, I would hope, for Bengals fans' sake, that they finally move on from Marvin Lewis after a 7-9 campaign. Taking one final look at the final projected AFC North standings. You see on your screen, I see Pittsburgh winning it at 10-6. Cleveland coming in second via tiebreaker over Baltimore at 8-8. The Ravens also finishing 500 in third place. And the Cincinnati Bengals, one of the best last place teams in football, falling into fourth at 7-9. As you see on your screen, it does have seed numbers there. Those are subject to change. I did not make all the projections for the entire NFL yet on the app that I use to make these projections game by game. And actually, I want to plug them here on the Unscripted with SkoodSports show. Definitely check it out. The address is on the bottom here on your screen. If you like making predictions, if you want to make counter predictions to SkoodSports, I would love to hear your thoughts on the 2018 NFL season. It's a really cool website. It allows you to just pick game by game, point and click, win, loss, or tie for each matchup, and then it calculates the playoff matchups, the final standings, win percentage, not only in the division, conference, but against winning teams, home and away. A lot of cool little nuggets, and it's definitely something to check out here on SkoodSports and beyond. That's going to wrap things up here on Unscripted with SkoodSports here on a beautiful Tuesday in August 2018 as we creep closer to the 2018 NFL kickoff, a Thursday night between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Atlanta Falcons. Next time out here on SkoodSports, we're going to be taking a look at Eagles training camp, taking a more in-depth look at how they're preparing for their defense of their 2017 Super Bowl title. And we'll also take a look at predictions for the AFC South, another uber competitive division where I think 3 out of the 4 teams have a rightful chance to win the division. And when you look at those 3 teams, the Texans, the Titans, and the Jaguars, I think all have great strengths and all have great flaws. And I'll predict that division's winner and game-by-game matchups next time on Unscripted. Until next time, good night, good luck, and good sports. I'm John Skoudras. Remember to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this and the past shows so that you can catch up on future shows when they do post. Next time out, most likely this Saturday, we will take a look at the AFC South. Good night, good luck, and good sports. I'm John Skoudras. This has been Unscripted with SkoodSports.
Outstanding girls basketball matchup between the